Well, if we come back to my favourite place of being still in the here and now, the stillness is actually neither man nor woman, is it? It's just invisible being. It hasn't differentiated, hasn't divided into man and woman. And so we use a word like oneness. The aim of meditation is union. And it's strangely enough that throughout our lives we long for union, however undeveloped we are. I mean, every animal looks for a mate, don't they? It's such as the compulsion. And God knows throughout my young life, like every other young man, I longed for that union with a woman. I thought it would make my life complete. And like everyone, I had a few moments of glimpsing it and many disappointments when I didn't. Oh dear, what a torment it can all become. I suppose it erupted into probably one of the greatest trials of my life when I was in my late 40s. When I remember there was another woman who she also meditated, and one day we'd been to a meeting together, and we sat in the car and we just came to stillness. And it seemed to open up for me then, inwardly of course. I saw nothing seen, but in my inward sort of insight, I suppose, I sort of saw a third point of oneness that somehow held her and me together in this oneness, which was completely new to me. I didn't really know how to cope with it at all, and it threw me into really a crisis that broke up my life at the time. But years and years of meditating on this, although nothing developed in the sense of a worldly connection with her, this spiritual union continued. And I began to realize that what I lost, or what failed to materialize in the flesh, was actually complete in spirit. That there was a oneness in spirit that continued, however separate we were in the flesh. Well, that was an exceptional experience. But it led me on, and now, some 40 years later, I'm even more aware of that. Because so often our worldly relationships don't really add up to our expectations. And they can really become very uncomfortable indeed, can't they? And yet, particularly those people who meditate, you discover that this love, which is so seldom complete in this world, so much of it just sort of ends up in the realm of compromise, give and take, that this love is actually perfected in spirit. And again, that helps me to understand that life is like a school where we, errant children, like the biblical story of the prodigal son, are gradually brought to realize that what we really seek is not to be found in this world. We find that it's taken away from us. We have happiness and then we lose it. We get moments of freedom, we lose it. We find love and something happens, it goes wrong, or the person dies or goes away or marries somebody else or something. And yet we find this union, and that really is what's called the mystical marriage, which may particularly be focused on one person that may share something of this experience with you, which happens occasionally. I mean, at best, marriage can be a very unselfish thing, which is very much a good step. The very process of living with another person forces you to at least consider them to some degree, which is a step away from complete dominance by one's own ego. So any step towards unselfishness is a step in the right direction, isn't it? But there are many, many more steps that may take you much, much deeper into the realm of union. It's a sort of preliminary. But this life is, that's why I think of life as a school. It's a preparatory school in which we are gradually schooled to something bigger than my own separate me. We tend to grow, I'm afraid to say, more through our trials than through our good times, I think. And blessed are those that mourn, for they shall be comforted. I think often it's the more unhappy misfits in life that actually somehow seem to take on board more lessons. Yes, I've often wished I had had a more happy, successful sort of connections in my life, but it didn't work that way, and maybe it's been to my benefit. I don't know, really. I'm sure we're all given what is needed, and there's a higher authority that determines what happens to us. But it's a good thing if you, somewhere along the way, you can gather a bit of trust in God, trust in something, in a higher force that determines. I think there again, as a farmer, it was always helpful. There's that good saying: "Man proposes, God disposes." You sow your seeds, you never know what's going to happen. You can't determine the weather, can you? Bugs come along, there's always something. But somehow, miraculously, you seem to get a harvest, most years anyway. Not always, but enough. The Lord does provide. And incredibly, I'm 80 years old now, somehow I've survived. I just have to trust, really. There's great safety in not knowing. I'm not ashamed now of saying I don't know. Isn't that what Socrates says? I know nothing. That's about it. Amen to that.